The Bearcats' offensive line held up nicely against Arkansas. That's in spite of losing an all-conference performer, though, for the season. How the Bearcats managed the loss of starting center Jake Renfro and what expanding the college football playoff to 12 teams means for the Bearcats on today's episode of Locked On Bearcats.
Our Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. It's free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Upside. Download the free Upside app and use promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Alex Frank here with you, your host, each and every day. It's Thursday. Normally we do a crossover on Thursdays. Last week we had John Neighbors from Locked On Razorbacks. Unfortunately, the Locked On Podcast Network does not have a Locked On Kennesaw State. So that's not going to happen today. What is going to happen today, though, is we're going to talk about two things that happened leading up to the Bearcats season opener at Arkansas that we haven't touched on yet because we've had our Turning Point Tuesday episode and we've had our film review and takeaways episode. So today, I'm going to finally touch on Jake Renfro, and I really do feel for that guy. I really do. Here's a guy who was instrumental to last year's offensive line, and now he's going to miss this season. It really sucks for him. First team all-conference in the preseason per Athlon Sports. Really high expectations for him. You lose your starting center. That's nothing small. Okay? But to me, it's just a blip in the blueprint. I don't look at this as a massacre, a tragic development part of this season. I look at it as you're losing just one of three first-team all-conference linemen, and you still have two in Lorenz Metz and Dylan O'Quinn. Your two deep is strong. I thought Gavin Gerhart filled in admirably on Saturday. I didn't see anything glaring. James Tunstall did well on Saturday as well. So, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, it sucks you lost Jake Renfro to a meniscus injury. And according to reports, the injury, Renfro sustained it on Saturday, or rather Monday, the Monday leading up to the game. Had surgery later in the week on Wednesday, I believe. And unfortunately, likely, as Pete Thamel reported from ESPN, likely season ending. But to me, I'm not knocking on Jake Renfro or anything or his value to the team, but you could lose far more important players. Like, I don't think Jake Renfro would have necessarily defined the season because we knew he was really good. I don't think his loss is that glaring. And if anything, the silver lining here is this Bearcats program now has the opportunity to do something I said that they needed to do this offseason. And that is finally put the stamp on what this program is all about, which is recruiting and developing players. And so Gavin Gerhart, who signed in December of 2019, has been with this program now for over 2 years, appeared in 4 games last year. Here is now his opportunity to show that he has developed over the course of the previous 2 years, and that he is ready for this. Because this is not just a fill-in. This is a replacing of a starter. In Jake Renfro, that's what Gavin Gerhart is. And I didn't see anything glaring from him that makes me think, okay, I'm worried about this. Gavin Gerhart, a 3-star recruit from Xenia. My mom used to live there, so did my grandparents. Granddad was a lawyer there for years. He was ready to go. Saturday was his opportunity, took full advantage of it. The coaching staff had him ready. And it all goes back to another thing that Luke Fickell is all about within this program, and that's healthy competition. You know, in years past where you really knew who the quarterback was going to be leading up to the start of the regular season, this time I don't think you did. Or, I'm sorry, even if you knew who the starting quarterback was, there was still that competition. Desmond Ridder and Ben Bryant were competing for the starting quarterback job in the spring of 2020. And then there's competition at every other position. And that's what the case has been on the offensive line. When you get a guy like Jake Renfro and Gavin Gerhart and John Williams and James Tunstall and Joe Huber and Lorenz Metz, the healthy competition creates depth at every position. And that's huge for a program that prides itself on being tough and nasty and physicality and all that stuff. Now, as far as on the field, what I'm interested in seeing is the running game going forward without Jake Renfro. Do the Bearcats run up the middle? Do they try some more outside runs? And how does this impact the usage of the running backs? Do they, utilize the power of Corey Kiner, or do they go towards more of a outside running game with Charles McClellan? Guys who can bust, runs out to the outside. Do they try more quarterback runs? It's going to be very interesting when we talk about how the running back room looks this year and who's the lead back and who's not, or who's maybe, has a more diminished, I shouldn't say diminished, but who has smaller roles on the team. What's going to be very interesting to me is how does the injury to Jake Renfro affect how they're used? What kind of style of running do we see? I still would expect some runs up the middle. And based on what Corey Kiner did on Saturday, I would expect him to be the starter and the lead back going forward. But again, this is a big blow to one of the strengths of this team. The offensive line is an absolute strength of this team. I mean, they had all five returning starters back. And now you're down one. But to me, in the grand scheme of things, after seeing what Gavin Gerhart did on Saturday, after watching the offensive line as a whole, only allowed 3 sacks. I thought they gave Ben Bryant an adequate amount of time to throw on most dropbacks. To me, it's just a blip in the blueprint for how this season's going to go. And that's a good thing if you're Cincinnati. The only thing I wish they did have was the cushion that will be a part of college football potentially in 2 years. And that's the college football playoff, expanding to 12 teams. We'll talk about how that relates to the Bearcats and what they accomplished last year. We will get into it after a word from Upside. From cringing at the pump to getting an eye-popping check at your favorite restaurant, inflation is hitting us where it hurts. And it really hurts. And that's why I started using Upside. It's an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out, because with every purchase, you're making cash back. You're earning cash back thanks to Upside. To get started, download the free Upside app, use promo code LOCKED, and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. Check in at the business, pay as usual with a credit or debit card, and get paid. In comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, you earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. Upside users are earning more than $1 million every week. That's probably why they have a 4.8 star rating on the App Store. Download the free Upside app and use promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using promo code LOCKED. Back here on Locked On Bearcats, Alex Frank with you, your host each and every day. It's Thursday, September 8th of 2022. NFL season kicks off tonight. We've made it. We've made it through the offseason of the NFL. Bills, Rams kicking off tonight. Cannot wait to watch that game. That could be a potential Super Bowl preview there. Anyway, Again, normally on Thursdays here on Locked On Bearcats, we have our crossover with the Bearcats' upcoming opponent, but we don't have a Locked On Kennesaw State, which is okay. So, in segment 1, we touched on Jake Renfro and how his injury, season-ending injury, most likely impacts the Bearcats this season. Now, we're going to transition into the college football playoff. Because as it was broken on Friday, the news broke that the college football playoff is going to expand to 12 teams for sure by 2026, potentially by 2024. Finally, the right thing is being done. Because for as great as a 4-team playoff is, and for as compelling as that makes the regular season, let's be honest, it is pretty dang hard to get to the college football playoff. And that's what makes Cincinnati's achievement last year more impressive. They can say, we made the playoff as a group of 5 team when it was impossible to crash the playoff. When it was impossible for a team that wasn't in the Power 5 to be one of the top 4 teams. Now it's guaranteed at least one group of 5 team will go. At least one group of 5 team, whether it be from the Sun Belt, the MAC, the American, Mountain West, or Conference USA. You are now guaranteed to see at least a group of 5 team in the playoff. And honestly, this goes for other programs at the Power 5 level. I think about all the great teams that did not get to play for a college football playoff. If Oklahoma State, if that game last year where they were stopped inches short of the goal line, if that game happens 2 years later, Oklahoma State's still in the playoff. Or if you're a Cincinnati Bearcats fan, which you are listening to this, if the playoff had been expanded last year to 12, you're not sweating your whatever to hope Oklahoma State doesn't score a touchdown on the last possession of the Big 12 championship. And if you're a Pac-12 school, because the Pac-12, I mean, they're in shambles. But now there's hope out west. Like if the playoff had 12 teams this year, Utah would still be a very, very good pick, even though they lost to Florida this past weekend. Now, I still have Utah in my college football playoff, along with Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama. But what the 12-team playoff is going to do is it's not going to make it so exclusive to teams like Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, etc. It's going to give other teams like perhaps Michigan more consistently, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Oregon, Utah. It's going to get some new blood in the playoff. Now, whether or not the games end up being blowouts or not remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, this, at least to a small degree, every team will enter the season with a chance to make the college football playoff. Every team in the Power 5, every team in the Group of 5. UTSA, Coastal Carolina, BYU, all of a sudden their seasons have more meaning. I mean, UTSA is not going to potentially go undefeated and go to a crapshoot bowl game. Like, they would now have an opportunity football playoff berth and be one of the 12 best teams. Now, there might only be one Group of 5 team that gets in and 11 Power 5 teams. That's probably how it will be. But now, one loss, like if this were expanded this year, the Bearcats would still be very much alive in my book. Yeah, they're unranked right now, but Michigan wasn't ranked last year at the start of the season. Look where they ended up. So, I'm excited that every conference will get a chance, and I think this could prevent the formation of super conferences. Because today, I'm happy for teams like Boise State and other teams in the MAC, the Sun Belt, that finally can now enter a season and say, hey, we have a chance. If we win out and we win our conference championship and we're good, hey, we deserve to be in the playoff. I mean, that could have been a lot of teams over the past few years. Now they're going to get that opportunity. And this doesn't diminish the regular season because you still have to play 8 or 9 conference games and get to that conference championship game. Because conference championships are going to determine who gets into the playoff. They matter at the group of 5 level, and they sure as heck matter at the Power 5 level. Why? Because Oregon, Utah last year, the winner of that game for sure goes. Loser? Maybe not. I mean, that would be a very tough debate. The ACC championship, Pitt and Wake Forest would essentially be playing for a trip to the playoff. The Big Ten championship, if Iowa would have won, Iowa would have been in the playoffs. So the playoff. So now you feel like every team has a chance. And then the wrinkle to this would be campus site playoff games in the first round. Can you imagine Nippert Stadium hosting a college football playoff game? Oh my gosh. The stadium would be packed to the brink. You probably couldn't get to campus that day if you weren't already there. The atmosphere for that game, if it ever happens, would be through the roof. Ticket prices would be exorbitant. And it would be the unquestionably biggest game in Nippert Stadium history. And to add that element of campus stadiums hosting playoff games, like think about if a matchup, for instance, was Florida at Wisconsin in the middle of December, and you're sending the Florida Gators up to Madison, Wisconsin. They might perish in that weather. Wisconsin would not. They're used to that weather. Jump around at Camp Randall. I mean, that would be an unbelievable experiment. And then you have Ohio State hosting the game. Tough atmosphere. You could have a West Coast team hosting the game. I mean, there are so many options to work with here. And an SEC school hosting a playoff game. I mean, can you imagine if Georgia and Florida played? If Georgia and Florida played in the first round and it was at one of those two team stadiums. Good Lord. I mean, that would be, I don't even want to know what that would be like. And again, this will not diminish the value of the regular season. You're still fighting to get to a conference championship game. You're still putting an emphasis on conference games. And every team now has a chance. It's more money for the group of 5 conferences. You can make the playoff playing in a group of 5 conference. This should have been done sooner. But at least now every team gets a chance. And that is what's most important. Coming up, our first look at Cincinnati's opponent on Saturday for their home opener, Kennesaw State. We do that after a word from 2 of our sponsors. All right, so for the first time since that magical night, the Bearcats, when they beat Houston for the AAC Championship, they will host their first home game of the 2022 season. The game has been sold out. Kennesaw State will come in. The Owls from Atlanta. Near Atlanta. Kennesaw State's a pretty good program. They're in the FCS. They're in their 8th season as a football program. But what they will do is they will run the football. More stats on how good their running game is on tomorrow's show. Kennesaw State number 18 and number 18 in the FCS top 25. It's a program that has been a playoff perennial. It is a program that has only had one head coach in their first 8 seasons. That's Brian Bohannon. So you can't overlook Kennesaw State. I know they're an FCS school. But you remember Murray State last year, a little nerve-wracking at times, wasn't it? So we'll talk about this more on tomorrow's show. Game preview, keys to the game, where this matchup could be decided, and of course my score prediction. But Kennesaw State's one of the most successful FCS programs dating back to 2015. Their running game is lethal. They're consistent in the top 25 of the FCS. They can score points. They don't get shut out very often. They've got a big dynamic quarterback in Xavier Shepard, and they have a head coach who's never had a losing season in program history in Kennesaw State. Now, the Owls will come into this game. The Owls will come in to this game at 0-3. No, I'm sorry. Doesn't say. They will welcome in. Oh, shoot. Trying to find their record. Kennesaw State. I think they're 0-1. So that means two teams will be 0-1 to start the season. Or, I'm sorry, start the second game. Excuse me. Looking to see if they have. I don't think they do. That's odd. Oh, they lost to Samford last Thursday. That's what it was. Now they have a week off after this week before they host Wofford. So big opportunity for the Bearcats to get that first win in the season. I've never recapped a football win on this podcast because the only two games I've done were the Cotton Bowl last year and the season opener this past week against Arkansas. So hopefully we can recap a win next week. I think I certainly think the Bearcats will. And I'll be back tomorrow with my game preview, my thoughts on the game, my keys to the game, where this matchup could be decided, and my score prediction. Thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. You can follow me on Twitter at Frankie_Natty with 2 N's, N-N-A-T-I. You can follow me on Instagram, AlexFrank9_, or email me at alex3frank@gmail.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now for your second listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022. This is a really good series. It's an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one Ultimate NFL Preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football 2020 Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to our Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel, now up to 516 subscribers and counting. Tomorrow's the game preview. Bonus content for you tomorrow as well, 3 o'clock, my preview of the Bengals-Steelers game on Sunday. You will hear from James Rapien, as you will hopefully hear from him every Wednesday on the bonus content. It's our Bearcats-Bengals crossover, James Rapien, with his thoughts on the game. We actually recorded that segment yesterday. We'll play it for you on the show on Friday. Still working to get Locked On Steelers host Chris Carter for that game. Of course, Saturday night, we'll have our recap of the game against Kennesaw State. And then on Tuesday, Turning Point Tuesday, next Wednesday, film review and takeaways. And then we really get back into the meat of the season. Rivalry game, the battle for the victory bell against the Miami Redhawks. I really thought Luke Fickell said something interesting in his press conference on Tuesday. I may have mentioned this on yesterday's show. The fact that he said they have humbled themselves enough to get better. Really strong quote from Luke Fickell. I'm Alex Frank for the Locked On Bearcats podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the opening kickoff game tonight between the Bills and Rams. Looking forward to seeing that. And please stay safe, stay healthy if you're going out to watch the game tonight. And I will talk to you tomorrow here on Locked On Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Alex Frank. Have a great rest of your day.